I've said it a few times on my channel, so you may recall that I was an NES kid growing up. The Nintendo Entertainment System was a revelation for me in so many ways. After being constantly let down by the previous generation, Nintendo's 8-bit machine showed up with graphics, sound, and gameplay that redefined console gaming from my point of view. Playing games like Super Mario Bros., Zelda, Metroid, and Pro Wrestling had taken console gaming from a passing interest to a full-blown hobby. Among the list of great software I was privy to, a game called Castlevania made its way into my hands in 1987. And what an experience it was. It mixed a bunch of themes together to form an entirely new type of game. It used the creatures from classic horror movies, mixed with a tale of a cursed bloodline that must battle them relentlessly. The imagery, the music, and the classic whip-based gameplay appealed to me on every level, and I found myself enthralled for months trying to perfect it. When Castlevania 2 came along in 1988, I jumped into that just as enthusiastically. I hated the way the game set up the clues, but the fun factor and appeal of having complete agency over where you went and what you did was undeniable. Konami recognized a good thing when they had it, because Castlevania 3 was ready for North America in 1990. This again took the series to new heights thanks to its multipath gameplay, new playable characters, and what is one of the finest soundtracks on that hardware. It was so good it pulled me away from the power of the Sega Genesis for a time, and remains one of my favorite games ever released. To say I was looking forward to the new 16-bit game in the series when the Super Nintendo launched is an understatement. Nearly the entire reason I was interested in that machine from the get-go was this game, and in this episode, we are going to take a look at it and see if it lived up to my expectations. I did a small review for this game 7 years ago, but I wanted to update it with a modern format and a more complete opinion on how I feel about it. I hope you guys enjoy my review of Super Castlevania 4 for the Super Nintendo. Our adventure begins in the year 1691, with what is essentially a remake of the very first Castlevania. Every 100 years or so in Transylvania, the evil Count Dracula rises from his grave to terrorize the populace and spread his corruption far and wide. Our hero Simon Belmont must face this threat by assaulting the Count's castle stronghold. There he will face an untold number of demons, ghosts, ghouls, and every other manner of nightmare you can fathom. Armed only with his trusty whip and an ironclad resolve, the journey begins. Like the original Castlevania on the NES, Super Castlevania 4 is a straight-up action title that contains none of the expanded elements of parts 2 and 3. You can't play as anyone but Simon, there's only one path to travel, you can't revisit prior areas, and there's only one ending. What is new are some rather robust changes to the gameplay mechanics. In prior Castlevania titles, the main character could only really whip forward, which made the combat possibilities quite limited. Super Castlevania 4 mixes things up by allowing you to whip in every direction around you. That's 8 directions in total. Simon also has the ability to control the whip by flicking it in much smaller bursts. This does much less damage but can also stop an enemy dead in its tracks, giving you some measure of both offense and defense if you are stationary at an odd angle or you have a particularly fast and agile enemy you need to slow down. Your weapon has multiple levels of power and you'll need to collect Morning Star icons to see its most effective form. Stage design is platform heavy and makes up a huge part of the experience. Some of these areas only have a handful of enemies to face, so be prepared to do a lot of jumping and swinging, the latter itself a new mechanic that allows you to grab onto dedicated hooks and dangle over certain death. Sub-weapons make a return and work just like they did before. You can get a watch, dagger, an axe, a cross, a bottle of holy water, and a special icon that allows you to throw multiples of each one of them. These weapons all have very different attributes that can be useful in a variety of situations. For example, the axe arcs up and back down. The cross acts as a boomerang and returns to you. The watch stops time, and the holy water is a firebomb that hits a single area multiple times. You'll find hearts all over the place, and this is your ammunition counter for your sub-weapons. Large hearts for 5, small hearts for 1. Other items of interest are the crucifix that destroys all enemies on the screen, invisibility potions that make you invincible, money bags that increase your score, food to replenish health, and of course the coveted 1-up for an extra life. Enemies are of an impressive variety for only an 8 megabit release, with each new area featuring a new baddie to face on top of the classic minions from past games. Each stage features a number of potential boss encounters, sometimes in the middle of the level. You will see the likes of Frankenstein's monster, Medusa, the Mummy, and even the Grim Reaper himself. Fortunately, you have a password system in place to save your progress and return to any stage you have already finished. In 1991, the visuals of Super Castlevania 4 were nothing less than stunning. The entire experience was easily one of the best looking games of its day, a powerful artistic and technical showpiece that showed the Super Nintendo was a formidable contender in the 16-bit market. Those multi-layered backgrounds are strikingly done. You can see so far into the distance that it leaves you curious what other life is back there. The foregrounds are varied and just as nicely done. From the gothic architecture to the insane locations, Super Castlevania 4 gives you a little bit of everything. Forests, caves, swamps, dungeons, treasure rooms, and clock towers await your arrival. The color use is perfect across these environments. Though the atmosphere is dark and dangerous, there are moments of real beauty to behold here. If the game stopped right there, it would still be a winner visually, but the developers at Konami went further by leveraging the Super Nintendo's impressive capabilities. Not only do you get some nice looking transparencies across the stages and enemies, but there are some eye-popping effects that can be as large as an entire level. Mode 7 is also sprinkled around in other places like the stage introductions and even a boss fight. I also love the enemy designs. Some of these were so iconic that Konami would use them again in future titles like Dracula X Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night. If I had to pin a complaint on anything graphically, it would be the look of the main hero sprite. Simon looks a bit underdressed for the occasion, especially considering how nice everything is around him. I would have preferred a more standout costume similar to the gear we'd see on Richter. But this is such a tiny complaint against a mountain of positivity that I feel dirty for even bringing it up. The truth is, Super Castlevania 4 is gorgeous start to finish, and you'll be hard pressed to find anything better the year of its release. I don't usually go into a lot of detail on my opinions of the music in my game reviews. I often let you listen and decide for yourselves. In this game, I feel compelled to say a bit more because there is so much right about this game's soundtrack. It's the kind of music that oozes from the environment, captures it perfectly, and is as important to the experience as the gameplay or graphics. What you hear in this game is up there with my most beloved tunes of that generation. We are talking the symphonic equivalent of FM masterpieces like Streets of Rage and Batman on the Sega Genesis. It's quite simply some of the best chiptunes you'll ever be fortunate enough to hear, and I have a few examples to share with you. Sitting down and playing through this again brings back a rush of memories that makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. This game didn't release long after the Super Nintendo debuted in North America, so to contain this level of polish and quality was impressive. While the character and enemy animations aren't anything special, the visual package is otherwise a home run. I mentioned how well the backgrounds are presented, and I love each and every evildoer you whip into oblivion. The special effects are on point, the music god tier, and the atmosphere fits it like a glove. But as great as all that is, it's the gameplay that feels so nice. The ability to whip all around you fundamentally changes the Castlevania experience. No longer does the enemy have the advantage. Above you, below you, or slightly askew, you can nail these bastards however they come at you. You feel powerful, even unstoppable at times, giving the game an almost superhero-like vibe. Add in a massive dose of platforming that makes the stages as important as the enemies, and this is the best this series had ever been at its release. Though I feel the core of this experience is exceptional, it most certainly has a flaw, however, and it will be something that will bother some of you and not matter at all to others. The difficulty is wildly imbalanced here. Castlevania up until this point gained a reputation for being a series with a great amount of challenge. Without guides, cheats, or other forms of help, sit down and play the NES games back to back and see for yourselves. They are no joke, and newcomers will need to log a fair number of hours to see their conclusion. Super Castlevania 4, on the other hand, is a cakewalk in comparison. Outside of a few platforming challenges to overcome, it is not difficult to defeat this the very first time you sit down to play it. Never before had a central Castlevania hero been so overpowered, and I'd argue that applies to most of the games in this series released after this. There is a second quest available once you defeat it that makes the game more difficult, but this is still orders of magnitude easier than it should be. This lack of challenge extends to the boss encounters as well. Most of these matchups require little more than standing still and spamming the whip to succeed. When you do face a boss that requires some finesse, it won't take long to figure out the simple pattern and overcome them. It would have been nice to see some of the enemies gain a few abilities that made them harder to hit, or maybe the bosses pop a second form that changed up the patterns. Couple in that password system and you'll fell this one in no time, especially if you are a veteran of the games before and after it. I was also a bit let down that none of the advances and features seen in Castlevania 2 and 3 made its way into this one. Another playable character would have been nice, a split path here and there could have worked, and a few friendly faces here and there selling new items would have been fun. None of that in any way kills this game's greatness, or affects my recommendation for it, however. Just go in knowing what you'll face and how it compares to the series overall. Should you be in the camp that dominates the average video game, be sure to start with the second quest password and you'll do just fine. For those of you that are interested in regional differences in video games, you may want to take a look at the Japanese version of this, called Akumajo Dracula. The Western release saw numerous changes due to Nintendo's policy of censoring anything related to blood, religion, or sex. These changes affect small images like crucifixes across a number of assets, statues showing a bit more skin, to the theme of an entire stage changing. The Japanese game features a blood dungeon, while the Western variant uses swampy green water. But as you may have guessed, Super Castlevania 4 garnered rave reviews from the media of the day. You will not find a bad opinion about this product from any official source. Even when a score is on the low side, you are usually looking at worst a 7 out of 10. In my personal experience, I've had friends that I've recommended this to that have come back and said it's one of the best games they have ever played. To be a part of that joy and seeing someone discover something so fun was a fantastic part of this game's experience. Of course, Konami would go on to produce many more outstanding Castlevania titles in the years to come. Once we saw things transition over to the more Metroid-style design, the older action titles began to slip into history as antiquated relics of a bygone era. The importance of Super Castlevania 4 and the fun it brought early Super Nintendo owners begins to fade in that context, but it should never be forgotten. This was so special, so well done, and such a standout piece of software in 1991 that I easily recommend you play it even if you aren't a fan of the series itself. Sit back, let that soundtrack and atmosphere overtake your senses, and immerse yourself into this world. I guarantee the vast majority of you won't regret it. I'm Sega Lord X. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.